饭的很感这个很有那个什么。对，很多啊，一男一女，对。
Would you all please stand?
Yes.
Stand.
So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. The sky, the river pond, tomorrow, the mountains to crumble to dust. I won't cry, I won't cry, no, I won't shed just as long.
不爽。那个
You all be
看一下
seated, please.
这边位置。
Let me introduce myself. I'm Bill Miller. I'm a professor of law at the University of Michigan.
帮主播看看他的网印。
没有，我帮你查。
7 years ago, they asked me to officiate the occasion. And it seems like even the heavens are conspiring auspiciously. I also want to say that as of yesterday, I can add to my resume that I am now a minister of the Universal Life Church. And I will add it to my CV as soon as this is over. I would, James and Connie both wanted to make sure that we take a moment to remember those who have passed, grandparents, uncles, James's father, Warren. They are here in spirit, obviously. Connie and James have asked their friends to read 2 poems for us. First, Josh Garcia, William Kwok.
We'll be reading an adaptation from Scientific Romance by Tim Pratt. A starship traveling from our Earth to some far star and back again, at velocities approaching the speed of light, made you younger than me due to the relativistic effects of time dilation. I show up to your doorstep, hoping you develop a thing for older men. And I'd ask you to show me everything you learned to pass time out there in the endless void of night.
If we were the sole survivors of a zombie apocalypse, and you were bitten and transformed into a walking corpse, I wouldn't so much as glance at my assault shotgun. I'd just let you take a bite out of me, because I'd rather be undead forever with you than alive without you.
If I had a time machine, I'd go back to the days of your youth to see how you became the someone I love so much today. And then I'd return to the moment when we first met, just so I could see my own face when I saw your face for the first time. Paradox be damned.
If I got lost in the multiverse, exploring infinite parallel dimensions, my only criterion for settling down somewhere would be whether or not I could find you. And once I did, I'd stay there, even if it was a world ruled by giant spider priests, or one where killer robots won the war, or even a world where sandwiches were never invented. Because you'd make it the best of all possible worlds anyway. And plus, we could get rich off inventing sandwiches.
If the singularity comes and we upload our minds into a vast computer simulation of near infinite complexity and resolution,
and become capable of experiencing any fantasy, exploring worlds bound only by our enhanced imaginations,
I'd still spend at least 10 to the 21st processing cycles a month just sitting.
on a virtual couch with you.
Watching virtual TV.
Eating virtual mapo tofu.
Holding virtual hands. And then wishing
For the real thing.
That is what we call a song duel. Poem number 2.
Rose by Wendell Berry. Sometimes hidden from me in daily custom and in trust, so that I live by you, unaware as by the beating of my heart. Suddenly you flare in my sight, a wild rose blooming at the edge of thicket, grace and light, where yesterday was only shade. And once more I am blessed, choosing again what I chose before.
When James and Connie contacted me about 6 months ago to see if I would do this, how could I say no? I mean, it was just, how could I say no? But they will testify to the fact that it has caused me endless sleepless nights, and I've been a nervous wreck since, because they wanted me to give a 15-minute speech. This won't go that long, but it won't be much shorter. But to stick to the text, I've written it down because they know, or students who've had me know, I can go off and off. I am as new to officiating at weddings as Connie and James will be to the state of wedlock. How did that lock get attached to wed? I assure you it has nothing to do with being locked in or locked up. Though it's somewhat of a philological mystery, just where that lock in wedlock comes from. And I think that Charles Dickens meant a grim rhyming pun when he named the most interesting character in Bleak House, Lady Deadlock. Let me say how flattered I am, a mere teacher passing through their lives. To be asked to assume this role, I'm more than flattered, I'm honored, I'm really touched. Let me return the flattery. James Blakemore counts among the 2 or 3 best students I've had in my 40 years of teaching. I wouldn't vouch for the first 20 years my memory's shot. But for the last 20, I can vouch. He would write papers in a seminar on the week's readings that held me in awe. I couldn't imagine doing half as well myself. I would sink into despair, wondering what I could possibly teach this guy. I thought he should be a literature professor, and had he taken my advice, he would be jobless. Or penniless if he found work in that dying field. Connie, no slouch in the brains department herself, is unforgettable for reasons I will treat you to, and perhaps embarrass her and others here. I can actually remember what Connie said in class, and so can her classmates. Even if that only requires me and them digging back 6 or 7 years. First, she confessed to a class of routinely having barely controllable urges to throw herself into oncoming traffic when walking down a busy street. She introduced this with a generalizing, you know that feeling you all have when you're walking down the street? In other words, she assumed that everyone had this urge, and she was utterly incredulous and a little bit mortified that no one shared it with her. It took me a while to figure out how to understand this urge of hers. Most of you know what vertigo is. That feeling you'll fall or hurl yourself from a high place, or from a high-rise balcony, or from a cliff. It just so happens that Connie's vertigo is 90 degrees off. She suffers from horizontal vertigo, when vertical vertigo is the norm. Vertigo and vertical come from the same Latin root, vertex, meaning whirlpool. What is Charybdis for us is Scylla for Connie. She's truly one of a kind. Have any of you read the short story they teamed up to write? It won first prize in a short story contest recently. It's very unsettling. And of course, Connie is the lead author. Chang and Blakemore, entitled The Date. No, not the date they first went out on, not the fruit of a forbidden palm tree, but another kind of date which I leave it to you to Google later. The kind of subtext of it will appear later in this talk. Connie turns out to be one of the two key figures in a world historical event. The tale might be a bit embarrassing, but it did not embarrass Connie to tell it to everyone in our class. We were talking about moments of shame and humiliation in which you just want to disappear, to have the earth open up and swallow you up. So Connie tells this tale. She was just 12 years old in Taiwan. On a very warm Sunday, the family goes to the zoo. Connie is wearing a sundress, and they stop before the gorilla cage. One enterprising gorilla reaches through the bars, rips Connie's dress off, and there she was exposed. Can you imagine? But the reason why I call this event world historical is that it's the grandest moment of revenge in zoo animal history. The gorilla got even for the myriad zoo animal resentments against humanity, for caging them, for boys mocking them, for throwing stones at them, and more. So in a moment of divine inspiration, this ingenious gorilla found the sweetest, most innocent, and adorable, purest little flower of humanity at her most self-consciously vulnerable age, and took revenge. Poor Connie bore all the sins of humanity to appease the wrath of the gods. We are gathered here to celebrate a wedding. And given that I am not really a law professor, but a medieval historian who gets paid as if he were a law professor, there are some points about weddings I want to mention before I get all mushy about love and the uniting of these two wonderful souls whose decency of spirit is proven not by their love of each other, for who wouldn't love them, but by their adoption of and love for an old one-eyed dog. Normally, people of their social caste would only accept a designer dog with something like Doodle in its name. They took in Pandy, who should really be here presiding in my place. Now think if this marriage were taking place 700 years ago, or just 150 years ago, before the great leap in human life expectancy. Spouses were unlikely to have to live in wedlock more than 15 years. One would drop. Now we live a long, long time. And assuming Connie resists the urge to throw herself into traffic, she will too. It might be a sin or a real faux pas on my part to mention this, but there are two ways around having marriages last much longer than the pre-industrial norm of 10 to 15 years. One is to postpone getting married, like James and Connie have done, until they're 33, so you wipe out 10 that way. And two is, please excuse me, but divorce now does what death used to do to keep marriages on average, Almost exactly the length they would have been 700 years ago. Second thing, sorry about that. Second thing, consider the wedding ceremony and accompanying feast later. The guests were, as now, witnesses. And they, in some cultures, not only witnessed the wedding, but often the bedding of the couple. Imagine trying to perform under conditions like that. So one case where being a woman is much easier task than being a man. The wedding was also about confirming property transfers to fund the new unit. Since both Connie and James are well-remunerated lawyers, they can probably do fine funding themselves. But if the feast was a time for celebration, it was often occasion for hard feelings. Seating arrangements were the problem. Seating was a terribly fraught matter. In medieval Iceland, it could start a blood feud and lead to dozens of deaths over the next 2 generations, for where you were seated was a matter of honor. Many of you have heard of wise King Arthur's attempt to get around this problem with a round table, which he thought would solve the seating problem by making all the seats carry equal value. But he was dead wrong, obviously so. We all know that 3 seats would immediately be worthier than the rest. The one to his right, the one to his left, and the one at 6 o'clock right across from him. Now, don't anyone here get offended by how far you are seated from the bridal table, or with whom you are seated, but just know that if you feel a bit peeved, you will be joining a well-attested multitude. May I mention children? Marriage was a way of making heirs, of kids, so they could inherit when the parents died. But it was also a way of assigning paternity to kids, because it was only until about 30 years ago with DNA sequencing that paternity could finally become a fact instead of a legal fiction. Marriage, that's true. Marriage assigned the kid a father, no matter who fathered the child. Marriage was not needed to assign a mother. That was obvious. Let me finish by getting sentimental. If that were even possible. As a teacher, I've dealt with tons of young adults, and they just do not get better than these two. An absolutely perfect pairing. You cannot imagine the sincerely genuine smiles of joy that were the standard reaction of when people heard that these two were a pair and were pairing off, and they just, and they just loved the idea. The many virtues that would draw the one to the other were obvious. And so what if we all lived too long? Let these two worthy human beings have a delightfully wonderful marriage that lasts 60 years. And though they might kill me for saying this, I hope they have a ton of kids as well as a ton of dogs. Just think how smart and interesting those kids would be. God bless, and among my people, James would have to smash a glass to smithereens, but soon we'll all be raising glasses. Congratulations and real children. Now we come to what an academic would call the performative part of the ceremony, where the words lock you in. Connie and James have prepared their own vows as an expression of their love for and commitment to each other.
James, after our first conversation 9 years ago, when you totally judged me for liking reality TV, I thought that you were someone I wanted to know. You have the kind of face that wants to smile, and the kind of voice that finds any excuse to tease. You're playful and funny in unpredictable ways, like the time you showed up at my apartment dressed as a hobbit. and I'm always laughing when we're together. The first summer we spent in New York getting to know each other was like fireworks in my memory. I don't drink, but I remember walking down Broadway arm in arm with you, feeling lightheaded and absolutely drunk on the happiness of being together. I think you might have actually been drunk on tequila, so maybe you don't remember. But that night, more than 7 years ago, we flirted and we planned our hypothetical wedding where we'd make everyone dress up like hobbits. We didn't end up doing that, but here we are now. You're the most intellectually curious person I know. You're always telling me some new fact about fish, or mind control fungus, or Alexander von Humboldt, or cryptocurrency. And then you sit down to watch an episode of 90 Day Fiancé with me. And you roll your eyes, but you do it because it makes me happy, and you secretly enjoy it a little bit. I could say so much more on the qualities I like in you. Your integrity, your courage, your creativity, your patience, your selflessness, and your kindness. I wish everyone here could see you carrying our 90-pound baby, Pandora, up 4 flights of stairs to our apartment because she heard her pop. Like most Asians who don't say this aloud, I may have never said this aloud to you. But let me say this now in front of everyone here. I love you. I always will. There are millions of possibilities for our future. Everything ahead of us is totally unknown. It's exciting, but it's also pretty scary. Here's one thing I do know, because I'm promising you right now, you will never feel alone again. I vow wherever you go, I go. You ride, I ride. You fight, I fight. I vow to be by your side, because you're the one I choose, completely and forever.
Now it's James's turn to respond.
So at our work, there's a tradition where when you leave, there's a farewell dinner. And at my farewell dinner, Nick spoke, Nick Karasimas. And he said that when he met me, he thought what most people think when they meet James. Connie seems like more fun. And he was right, of course. In our first years in New York, I remember you freaking us all out with ludicrous hypotheticals and would you rathers. And when bosses would wander by and happen to ask what we were laughing at, you would freak us all out more by posing some of the coarser hypotheticals to them. I remember thinking, not for the last time, who's this person who holds such views? Who says such things to bosses? You're the kind of person who can tell an interviewer her greatest fear is Sharktopus and still get a job offer. Who can consistently show up to work around midday, goof off half the afternoon, and still be begged to stay when you leave the job because you're good at your job and they like you. You're a paradoxical ball of lunacy and achievement that I have no interest in trying to imagine my life without. I remember calling my mom one day more than half a decade ago, and noticing as I was talking to her that stories about New York and work more and more were about you. That most of my daily fun, most of what I remember and want to share, most of what matters to me in the end was coming from you, and does come from you. And I remember thinking in that moment, and having a dim premonition of today. I couldn't, of course, at that time have had any idea what you'd come to mean to me. That I'd be standing here today promising to lie to you about what time important events start, but never to tell you there's food where we're going when there's not, especially when where we're going is the top of a mountain at 4 a.m. at the bottom of the world. That we'd have a dog whose devotion to you is the purest demonstration of your worth I can imagine. A devotion that I promise I will always strive to match, but probably can't hope to. That I promise, as I do, to continue to take the helm in the mornings when you are at your weakest. and to take on extra whenever else you are vulnerable or worn down or just so tired. The only sure thing about our future is that, like the rest of life, it's going to be hard. There's going to be setbacks, there'll be fights, there'll be tragedies. But all I can promise is to do all I can to enable you better to enjoy life, and when life is unenjoyable, better to endure it. I love you. Wherever you want to go, I'm going there. Whatever you want want to do, that's what I'm doing. That's it. Those are my plans until I die.
Today you choose each other before your family and friends. You're all witnesses. Begin your life together. Will you please join hands? James, do you choose Connie to be your partner in life, to support and respect her, to care for her in sickness and in health, to grow with her throughout the seasons of your life together?
I do.
Connie, do you choose James to be your partner in life, to support and respect him, to care for him in sickness and in health, and to grow with him throughout the seasons of your life together? Now, for the exchange of rings. May these rings serve to remind you always of the vows you have taken here today. James, please place the ring on Connie's hand and repeat after me. With this ring, I join my life with yours. And Connie, please place the ring on James's hand and repeat after me. With this ring, I join my life with yours.
I join my life with yours.
Now that you have given yourselves to each other with solemn vows and given and received rings, witnessed by all your friends and family assembled here, it is with great joy that I pronounce you husband and wife. You may now seal your vows with a kiss.